Hi, I'm Tim with the Iola Register, and I'm here with Stacey Fager, the Superintendent of USD 257 Schools. How are you, Stacey?
Hey, doing great today.
Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for making the time.
Hey, you bet.
Well, I'm really glad you're here. There's a couple things, especially that I know are on your mind as the legislative session kicks off and kind of gets started. But before we get into some of the nitty gritty, and one of the things that I'm keeping my eye on is Senate Bill 302, which would effectively ban cell phones in schools, at least during instructional time. And we'll get to that. But before we kind of get started with those proposals, I think it's useful to step back a little bit. And I just wanted to ask you a little bit about yourself. And tell me a little bit about your educational journey. I guess I'm kind of curious what role education has played in your life. I know that you're superintendent, but I'm just kind of curious how you see education as transforming your life, affecting your life, being a part of kind of who you are.
All right. Well, growing up on a family farm outside of St. Paul, Kansas, not too far away, that was kind of what I experienced. Just really enjoyed it, the educational aspect there of a small community and the support that the community had for the school system, but also the coaches that we had. And so my goal when I was in high school, I can even remember creating a resume, was to be a high school science teacher and a coach for football and basketball. And the two sports that I really enjoyed playing, along with summer baseball as well. And sure enough, that's when I went to Pittsburgh State. That's what I ended up, my interests kind of aligned, and getting into science and becoming a high school science teacher and a coach in a suburban district outside of Wichita, right out of college. So enjoyed my time in college and I taught high school science and coached football and basketball and baseball for 14 years. So really enjoyed my time in the classroom and working with students in that capacity. But as our children were starting to get a little older, kind of looked at and some prodding from some administrators in the district that I was in. Why don't I look at being in the administration? And so started taking classes for a master's at Wichita State, and then looking for a job in administration. It led to a vacancy here in the Iola School District. And living out in Wichita area, we lived in Bel Air and northeast side of Wichita. We really liked that community in that area, and then all the services that area had. But when the Iola situation with the administrator came open, it was a chance to get back to more of where our parents lived. My wife's parents had retired in Girard, and my parents are still on family farm outside of St. Paul. So it became much closer for our children to be around their grandparents and in that dynamic. And so when they offered the job, we came to Iola.
And that's the rest is history.
The rest is history. I can remember my wife saying, well, we might stay for 2 or 3 years to get some experience and see what other opportunities materialize. And that was 19 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, our oldest was just starting kindergarten when we moved to Iola, and she's in her second year teaching in the Omaha public school system in 3rd grade right now.
Awesome.
And so
it's following in your footsteps in a way.
Extremely proud of Allie becoming an educator. Yes.
But that kind of hints at something. What do you see? And maybe your daughter is of a similar belief. But what's the job of education? What is it supposed to do? And I mean, kind of looking at it from a 30,000-foot elevation. What's its job to do for our young people? I mean, what's the goal when they graduate and when they leave our school system? What are we trying to do with these kids?
Yeah, I just feel like we're here to lead them down a path where they can be successful, to support them on that journey, to let them know that their goals, their dreams, ambitions can be attainable if they want to work hard to get to that. and support them is the biggest thing. So I feel like whether it's in the classroom or as an administrator, that's what our job is to do, and to work with our students, to communicate with parents, and to provide that support system to allow our students to have the best chance to do whatever it is they choose to do in their future.
Yeah. How has that changed from when you started as an administrator to now? And then kind of the flip side of that, what are some of the constants? What stayed the same?
One of the biggest things that have changed, and you've probably experienced this, Tim, being in a classroom yourself, is when I started, it's been a while. It was the fall of 1993 that I started in teaching. Yeah. And I could remember it wasn't even the administrator. It was a fellow science instructor gave me the curriculum, which was a book that we were teaching out of in science, but it was basically, you can teach what you want to teach. This is what I do, but you don't have to follow what I do as far as chapters or outcomes. And there wasn't any structure. It was just you taught.
You were the king of your classroom in a way.
You were the instructional leader, and you taught what you felt was important that the students know with that particular curriculum. And that was in the 90s. And we have much more curriculum alignment and structured outcomes now than we did back then. No Child Left Behind with the George W. Bush administration is what really kind of led to some changes in curriculum mapping and looking at structured outcomes that you need to cover with, whatever curriculum that you're teaching.
Yeah. Do you think, and I know you're not in the classroom, I guess let me tell you what I think. I think being a teacher today is a lot harder than what it used to be. One of the things that I think makes it harder is when I was a teacher too, you published grades like once every 9 weeks, maybe 4.5 weeks, you put a progress report out there. And that was kind of, the extent of the transparency into the classroom. Now, and I don't know if this is good or bad, but I feel like it's harder now, is that grades are constantly updated. There's apps, there's push notifications, there's, you can log on and see what your child is doing down to the percentage, every missing assignment. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I would agree. From my experience, I can remember you kept your grades in your grade book. There wasn't an electronic program when I started to put grades in. Everything was manual. You figured grades with a calculator, and I would do it at progress report time, 9 weeks time, then the fall progress report, and then the semester. And that's kind of, you'd have to plug all the grades in and then just get the percentage and went by total points. Now parents have access in real time daily on what their child is missing, what their grades are, and they can communicate that with the teachers on a daily basis through email.
And I know
none of that happened when I started.
And I know there's good things about that, and I'm not trying to be a Luddite and act like it's bad. It's just different, I guess it's just something that's kind of confusing to me, or just part of this new normal.
And I will say it's kind of what led to, at parent-teacher conference, a lot more unknown, because parents, for the most part, didn't know what their child was missing, had turned in, what they were lacking. But now there's much more information that they can glean before those conversations even happen. So,
one of we moved to Iola in 2018, and at that point, the bond issue was coming up, and I'm wondering now that this passed in April 2019, I think was the day.
It was,
and so now that we come up, almost 7 years after that, what are you thinking? How are things going? How proud of you are you of that accomplishment? Just kind of, would you do it all over again?
I would in a heartbeat, because I feel like the effects of that bond issue has done nothing but elevate just the importance of education in the Iola communities that we serve in Iola, Gas, and the Heart. Having that building on the east side of town as you come into Iola has made that appearance so much better. The functionality, having all of our programs that we offer for elementary students under one roof, not the division or having teachers travel between 3 separate buildings within the school day, just the inefficiencies with that. So yeah, I would do it all over again. And it wasn't just, hey, let's have a bond issue. And it was
A long
2
road.
years,
Yep.
2 years working with SJCF and the steering committee process and having public meetings and comments and then determining what's the scope of the bond issue with that steering process, then to present to the board to see, are they in favor of that's the direction that we go to create a bond. So yeah, it was an extremely valuable learning process, but I would do it again because the effects have just been so great for the community.
And teacher morale. I mean, have you felt like people are really happy, teachers are happy in that building, that they have what they need now in ways that they didn't before? I mean, I remember before there were closets, there were offices in hallways of McKinley, and storage closets had been repurposed.
Exactly. I was just there this morning, and I don't think you can walk into that building and not feel a sense of pride and for the community and what we're able to offer our students and parents here in this district.
I have to flip it because when we reported earlier this year, I think it was earlier this fall, enrollment at Iola was down about 5%. Now, it wasn't down only in Iola. Humboldt lost students. I think Moran was basically flat. So this wasn't, Iola was a standout. And you look at public school enrollment across the country, and it's down. But I'm just kind of wondering what you see in those numbers in the enrollment of Iola as you kind of project with your board and look to the future. What are you seeing?
Yeah. And it's even statewide. This is going to be the smallest incoming kindergarten class this year. It has been that they have in recent memory. So the trend is for smaller enrollments in public education statewide. So yeah, that's been a challenge. One thing that we're upfront about is we're only scrutinizing. Are we at the right size for our school district with staff that we have in place and our instructors? And when there's vacancies, we make sure that, okay, is this a position that we need to fill based on, because we have declined in enrollment from, the 1980s to where we are now, right, considerably. When I came here in 2007, every class in the high school was over 100 students. Now there's not a class in the whole district that has 100 students in it. So it's mimicked the county as a whole, as the county has lost population,
right,
and the counties around us. We see that with the school district as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's across Kansas. I think out of 105 counties, 100 lose population, year after year. I think there's just kind of 5 standouts. I guess, I think when I look back on the new elementary school, one of the arguments was, this is what we need for our district. I didn't hear a lot of people saying, oh, this is going to grow enrollment. It wasn't a bad idea, right? I mean, this wasn't something that you were expecting was going to boost our enrollment for 5, 10, 15 years down. I mean, that wasn't something that hasn't panned out for you.
I think the biggest goal from myself and the board was it would stabilize enrollment.
Okay.
And that was the biggest hope. And we did have, when the first year in 2022, when it opened, we did have a small increase in enrollment.
Right.
And that was great. But it wasn't what was promised with the bond election or from the board that, a build it and they will come type of mentality.
Right.
It was to stabilize our operations and to be more efficient in what we do and how we service the school district. So yes, we would like to see an increase in student population and a population with the communities that are in the district. And, we're looking at opportunities to provide some more housing with our McKinley and Jefferson elementaries with what we have in place with BNIM.
Right.
That should materialize here this summer, with hopefully by fall with construction starting to that. So we're really looking for opportunities that if we can provide some more housing, maybe some stability and student numbers will materialize.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got to ask you about Senate Bill 302. There was some testimony late last week about Senate Bill 302, and it was pretty divided. There's been some major school districts in the Kansas City area who have that have opposed it and said, "Hey, this could be an unfunded mandate. We don't need a one size fits all kind of approach to the issue of cell phones in schools." So, what are you hearing from teachers? What are you hearing from your board, parents? And kind of what's your immediate reaction when you think about, hey, and Humboldt's done this. This is not unknown to Allen County residents. Humboldt has basically done Senate Bill 302 already. So kind of what's your take on it so far?
And, as I've talked to other superintendents that their school districts have embraced banning cell phones, there hasn't been a big negative towards it, but it is one other thing that then, because we have had cell phone ban when I was at the high school even as well initially, and then we went to limited use during the school day. But it just by having a bill and banning it, it doesn't just alleviate, there's no issues for the school district in enforcement. There's still students. I mean, I can, from other districts, there's still a challenge in enforcing the rule with that. But with that said, I just feel like with the approach that our school district has taken is how can we use for limited use of cell phones to the advantage of the school district to incentivize grades and attendance. And that's been the focus of how our administrators have proposed it to the board. And the board has agreed for us locally to have a limited use type of opportunity in our high school. But if situations change with the legislature and it becomes a bill that's actually approved, then we will capitulate and enforce something different. And I don't think it will be a huge change, but yet it will just be something that will be different for our students and our teachers.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's going to pass. Kelly has signaled her support. There's 28 out of 40 co-sponsors in the Senate. Like, and that's almost everybody.
And it is, I think it has gained traction. And with Governor Kelly saying that she's supportive of it, if a bill comes to her desk, it will be an election year this fall. And I think if that bill comes up to vote, it will pass. And I think Governor Kelly will sign it if it comes to her desk.
Yeah. And you think, have you heard anything from parents or, anybody reaching out to you about this, or is this not really on people's radar?
I really haven't. I think in my capacity, I'm more interested in the funding mechanisms for the state legislature and the governor ensuring that public schools have adequate funding, a little more than this is an issue, but probably not my top issue.
Your top issue. Okay. Is your top issue the funding of special education, or is it just kind of the general, when you look at capital overlay and you think, okay, how are we going to pay for these types of things? What's on your mind when you look at Topeka?
I've thought a little bit about this, and I've been very fortunate. This is my 9th year as superintendent here in the Iola School District, and it's been a great time in public education during that time because when I was high school principal, when Jack Kane was superintendent and the board that was in place then, we were dealing with funding cuts during that time. And finding any money for staff and faculty raises was extremely difficult. And with the Gannon Supreme Court decision and providing not only adequate funding, but then consumer price index adjustment every year, that's giving some more. Most school districts, if they at least stay fairly consistent in enrollment or slightly increase, at least some funding increases from year to year. And with that, we've been able to plan for faculty and staff raises within the district so that we could be more competitive with
Right.
other areas of the state.
Right.
And so I feel like we've done some amazing things working with the teachers union, our board of education, and now Iola is one of the top 3 as far as starting teacher wages in Southeast Kansas.
And you need that to bring people here. There is not a lot. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean or talk down on Iola, but when you're a teacher, there are a lot of vacancies. I mean, teachers have hundreds of open positions across the state, right? And so, I mean, we need to compete. We need to attract teachers.
I can remember as a senior at Pittsburgh State, and they would have in the spring a teacher placement day, and going to that. And I was in science, and there was about a dozen of us that were science candidates going out looking for jobs. But I can remember some peer students that were in elementary education and stuff, and it filled the whole student union at Pittsburgh State. There could have easily been 200 to 250 elementary education major students looking for jobs at that time as well. Now, today, there might be 30 to 50 total, elementary to secondary, looking for jobs in the spring from a university. So people don't realize how the numbers have constricted over the course of 30 years.
Yeah.
And it makes filling positions extremely challenging. And this is why the Iola School District has really looked in trying to build our own or grow our own,
right?
And finding incentives to get very good candidates that look like they have promising careers in education, the ability to get their foot in the door and then work towards certification to become a certified teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to grow your own as much as you can and then attract the talent. Teachers are probably getting 4 or 5 other offers or looking at other positions. When you think about special education, I know that that's been something we've heard from Corinne at A&W Co-op about the dire needs of special education funding. Is that a special concern as you look at this upcoming session?
It is. I know in Governor Kelly, I think she proposed $50 million more for special education, and the legislature's blueprint, the budget they're looking at, isn't proposing any increases. And every year you don't increase it, you fall further behind. So yes, it is a challenge. It does pull funds from our general fund to compensate for what isn't funded through special education. And whether it's a regular ed student or a special education student, there are students. And so we're going to do everything we can to give them the best chance at an education, because you got one shot to get an education as you go through school.
Yeah. Yeah. When you think about one of the things that I've seen change a lot over the years is an increasing focus on CTE, career and technical education. And I'm wondering how you weigh or how you balance, and when you look with the board as well, a focus on trying to prepare kids for some of these technical education jobs, but still giving them the well-rounded education that puts them in a good place to succeed in college, to succeed in just like a changing world. I think about a lot of the automobiles of the future. I think about the jobs of the future. There's so much we don't know with AI and technology. I think that's got to be challenging, because I know we need plumbers. I know we do. But I also know that there's just a changing global economy that we don't know what things are really going to look like in 10 years.
Yeah, with AI and what that could, kind of foster here going forward, it's almost like the start of the computers and so forth. Where will we be in 5 years? I have no idea.
Yeah.
How will it change education or jobs that our graduates seek in the future? That's kind of an unknown. It has the opportunity to kind of downsize workforces in certain areas, but what will be the positive from that? There is a lot of unknowns on how that's going to happen. And even instructional wise, how do we embrace AI into what we do in the educational piece? So it's, if we're sitting down here a couple of years from now, it would be like, well, who would have known that this would have happened? Because it is a changing time right now with that technology.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I remember hearing a lot about in education is we're trying to teach our students skills to be effective in a democracy, skills to be effective in the workplace. And we're not trying to prepare students necessarily for jobs, because those jobs could change. Those students could change jobs. They could say, hey, I thought I wanted to be a welder and I didn't want to be. What are some of those skills that you see? I think about communication skills. I think about being able to collaborate and work on teams that you see as really, really important, as tried and true, and they're going to prepare students well.
Well, and I really see that when I'm out at the Tech Center in La Harpe, the RRTC that we have there. And when you see these students working together in a small group or something, whether it's in auto mechanics and they're underneath the hood, or in welding where they're over there, welding pipe together, that you see them in a different aspect where they're not sitting in a classroom and just receiving information, but they're actually performing.
Yeah.
And so that's really, and they're seeing where that fits into what they want to do. And so I've been extremely happy with how our school board has embraced career tech ed, and how we have people in place in the school district to support that. Our articulations that we have with Neosho Community College, Allen Community College, Flint Hills Tech, out at our tech center in La Harpe, and Cloud Community College with Wind. So there's been some great opportunities for our students to get training and real world opportunities, so that if they want to stay in this community and work, they have the ability to do that. But in the same token, with Allen Community College and our dual credit classes that are more aligned with traditional college type of careers, they have that mechanism too. I know my daughter, my oldest daughter, Allie, didn't graduate from Allen and high school at the same time, but she was only a couple credit hours short of being able to do that.
Yeah.
And she just liked the dual credit offerings that they had. And so she really excelled in that capacity. And now she's an educator, and kind of see how that kind of fell in line. But, so we have the opportunity for both. And if you try something out, you're doing it in a time of your life where you can make changes very quickly and decide that isn't for me. I want to change and maybe go to college. But if I want to work in the summers, I can maybe weld or work on a car for a local shop, and maybe make a lot higher wage than I could at some other job.
Yeah. Are there any pieces of legislation, any bills, as you look into Peaker? Because I know you follow this closely. Anything you look at and think, God, that is a really bad idea. Anything that you're just like, no, please don't become a law.
And I've talked a lot with our Board of Education about this. I feel like probably the bill that's probably the most detrimental to public education would be, and I don't have the bill number right in front of me, but it'd be that deals with school vouchers. Mm-hmm. It's because it incentivizes private and parochial education with tax dollars, but yet it doesn't change any of the dynamics of how they select the students that they choose to educate. They wouldn't be required to educate more or take everyone, but yet they would be incentivized
receiving public
dollars, tax money, and have no oversight from the state or the federal government how that money is spent.
What's been your impression about our local legislators? We have Fred Gardner, and then we have Karen Tyson. Are they generally supportive of the voucher idea? Have they been? Do you make when you make the arguments to them and understand, especially here, there's no real alternative besides homeschooling. I know that there's a Catholic school in Chanute, and maybe I could go homeschooling or go virtual, but do they understand how detrimental this would be, or are they do your comments fall on deaf ears, I guess?
I had conversations, and I would just hope that they continue to happen, and that they would continue to be receptive of public school officials and the support that we have for our public schools in our communities, because it is what drives our community. You know, when someone thinks about their school here, they're thinking about Iola High School.
Yeah.
This is where their tax dollars are supporting their students to get the best education possible. So I'm hopeful, but I also know in the federal legislation with the big beautiful bill, it actually will come into play in 2027 in January for a federal voucher program. And
Really?
there is a state bill right now that's looking to kind of reclassify homeschooling as a private school. And that could probably be seen as a precursor to allowing voucher money then to flow to homeschool. So I just feel like in states that have enacted this, in my opinion, that there's been, when costs have been initially said it would cost this much, like in Arizona that was initially said it would cost $250 million, and now it's approaching $1 billion.
Oh, wow.
There's just huge overruns, and then it allows to raise tuition rates because now they're receiving dollars that they normally didn't receive from tax money. So it's just my personal opinion. I feel like it's not the best thing for the state of Kansas, and it's definitely not the best thing for public education, because tax money will be taken away from public ed to serve. I equate it to like a local country club. You know, we probably in this community wouldn't support our tax money incentivizing people to have a country club membership.
Yeah.
In the same token, that's how you can kind of equate it to private or parochial school. That's an extra that you're choosing to do as a parent, even though you're paying taxes to support your local public education. You're choosing something different, but in the same token, you're incurring the cost with that, just like a country club. But it could be different with vouchers.
Yeah, yeah. How many employees does the school district have?
Around teacher-wise, we're right at that 86 range for our instructors. Mm-hmm. And then overall employees, you look at a whole lot there. It's a little over 200. 200. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I ask that just because I really understand what you say when you really I see the school district as the heartbeat of the community. I mean, when there's no school, Iola feels like a town, like a different town. You know, all of a sudden it takes 3 minutes for me to get to work. Now it takes 2, you know, yeah. Or you just kind of see a lot fewer people circulating town, and just that immense pride in our public school. I mean, how, when you think about your role as superintendent, how do you kind of understand your impact in the community? I mean, how do you kind of see yourself in Iola, I guess?
Well, that's a good question, Tim. You know, it's pretty hard, you know, as a school official, it's hard to separate yourself from your private life to your school life of when you're at work, because I feel like in the community, wherever you're at, they see you as that mm-hmm. Individual. And I'm fine with that, because I take the responsibility that's been given to me with a, you know, I mean it.
You welcome that.
Yeah, I welcome that, and I embrace it, and I want to do what I feel like is best for not only my family, but also for the community, for our students, for our parents, so that we have the best system in place. And so it's, I don't know, I've been in education a while now, and I've served in different roles, but I've enjoyed everything that I've done in education, from a classroom instructor to high school assistant principal and principal to superintendent. And I feel like when I look back, I wouldn't do anything different. Oh. I enjoy my time in education. I would encourage any young individual to seek out to be an educator. There's so many things that it can give, and things that you can give back to a community that you serve.
Yeah.
So I've always enjoyed my decision to be in education.
The last question I want to ask you is about forward, the future here. Looking forward, we talked about the 2019 bond issue. As you look at the middle school, which is 101, and you look at the high school, which is even older, and then you look at a brand new elementary school, you've got some transportation buildings going up on the east side of Cottonwood there, right? Those are the
maintenance and multi-purpose building.
What's next on your list? What are you thinking? Okay, eventually in the next couple of years, we've got to tackle X, Y, or Z, or when you think about the facilities, I guess, what are some things that you think, okay, eventually a decision's got to be made about X, Y, or Z?
Well, and I think a lot of this is another good question. And some of these things will start materializing here this spring semester. The board is having some discussions. We've had a local company, DCS, do some work in identifying with our middle school, high school football stadium, some improvements that could be made.
Football stadium. I
and
forgot about that.
The board has had a retreat here last week to look at a number of these things. So even in our board meeting Monday, I don't want to get ahead of the board on this, but we could be looking at things that could help get us to that next bond issue, whenever that might be. And knowing that we're right now, right around 25 years until our this current bond is paid. It's a 30-year bond, and it was approved in 2019. It will probably take that point, 15 to 20 years to start planning for, in earnest, when could potentially a wraparound bond happen so that we keep the mill rate the same, but yet look at improvements. And what might that be? At that point, would it be time for a new high school that could potentially hook on to the new science building, and where you have everything under one roof on the east side of Cottonwood? Because right now our students travel across Cottonwood Street every class period.
Yep.
And
I hate that. Yeah. I live in Meadowbrook, and I drive through Cottonwood, and there's two things that I hate about the high school. One thing is I hate the students that are crossing, and I know why, but I think I've told you this before. Just the other day I was driving up there, and some dude misses a football pass, and the football goes into Cottonwood, and I'm a pretty good driver, but I'm just like, dude, don't run. The second thing is, I love the new science building. I love it. I went in there, a couple months ago. It was right after we had published a magazine, and so I dropped off some copies in the science center. And the light that came in through those windows, the positive vibe I got out of it's just a really nice building. And then you go across into the high school, and it looks the same as when I graduated. And I'm like, come on.
It's a very functional building. And, when with the steering process, we looked at 3 questions, and one was the elementary school, but it had to pass before we looked at the alternates. And then new science building was second question, and then the HVAC and remodel at the middle school. Yes, it's a very nice building, but it's also 25% of a new high school if we were had to add on to it. And so we're in a good situation to where, if we are to look at a bond issue down the road, at least 25% of that is already done. That could transition into adding on and facilitating a more efficient or cost-effective bond in the future. And that was a really goal of the board, was let's get it to the point in the future where it's hopefully one item, not what do we do with the elementary buildings? What do we do with the middle school? What do we do with the high school? But maybe the next bond issue is just a sole focus on, we need to upgrade our high school. How are we going to go about doing that? And that could be the focus.
Well, we'll look to the board meetings to see what happens.
Yeah. And I really commend the board. We're not waiting for 15, 20 years and not doing anything, but they're having active discussions on what will get us to that point so that we can make improvements to still serve our students and our faculty for the next 15, 20 years until potentially that happens.
I'm going to end it here because it sounds like we're about getting kicked out of the noise. But thank you very much, Stacey, for your time. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you for your work with our kids.
Hey, you bet, Tim.
All right.